Alright, why are we looking at Pat the NES Punk and James Rolfe sitting on a couch? That's because recently on Pat the NES Punk's podcast, well, one of his podcasts, he talked about a video that was put out by Folding Ideas. I don't know James Rolfe. And this Folding Ideas guy talks about how he, as a filmmaker, YouTuber, somebody who very much connects with the angry video game nerd, also known as James Rolfe, how very disconnected he feels from him, how he doesn't know him ultimately, and like how he can feel such a connection with somebody but actually not really know them at all and be a completely different person than they are. And he examines the relationship between a content creator and their fans. It's a really interesting video. I recommend you watch it. It's a long one, but it is interesting. So Pat disagreed with Folding Ideas' point that the Angry Video Game Nerd movie, because the Angry Video Game Nerd, James Rolfe himself, he went to film school before he made YouTube videos. Old school YouTuber who made videos before YouTube even was a thing, reviewing retro video games, and did a phenomenal job. He made some of the first YouTube videos that had like production, editing, costumes, like real quality YouTube videos. And James Rolfe was one of the first people to make any money off of his YouTube videos, as it led people to like Screw Attack, to where his videos would make money. Just an OG, highly respected guy who also does a lot of content where he talks about films. He's done a lot of film reviews, particularly horror ones, in the month of October. Which is why James Rolfe eventually changed his channel to being called Cinemassacre, because that was like the website that he had, where like James Rolfe's entire like life goal is to make films, more so than it is to make YouTube videos. But it's a very logical step. It makes a lot more sense to make YouTube videos than it does to make a movie. It's easier, it's way shorter. There's less requirements, there's way less people involved. It's infinitely easier to get it out there and get it making money than it is with a film. Now there's a lot of streaming services, but they're very competitive to really have like a hit movie on a streaming service, or even have. It's far easier to be making money off YouTube videos than it is to be making money off of films on the streaming service. It just is, right? Now, James eventually crowdfunded like over $200,000 and made his own film. And that film, Folding Ideas says, and I agree with completely, is that it doesn't have a vision. Pat thinks that went a little too far to say it doesn't have a creative vision. And the movie's loaded with creativity, but it definitely lacks a cohesive creative vision. The movie's very disjointed, all over the place. None of the ideas really tie together very well. It's a mess of a film. But Folding Ideas ultimately makes the point like, hey, the guy got to make a film. That was his goal. He achieved it, and that's freaking beautiful. And I agree with that completely. But I'm more so, and I also agree with him that, you know, the film does lack creative vision. Obviously not entirely, so that is a bit of hyperbole, but it's true, it's fair, and it's just a film. Like, I feel like the internet, anybody who's ever been a fan of James Rolfe, like, we all feel kind of bad. But you have to understand, a lot of times films end up being a mess. It happens super frequently. Like, pick up any random VHS from a thrift store that isn't like a big Hollywood movie, that just looks like some random nonsense without any like star or actors in it, or just the most if you just pick the most random VHS or DVD from a thrift store, you are going to see a movie that is a disaster. Most of the time. Like, obviously there's going to be some awesome hidden gems. Those certainly exist, but more times than not, it's a complete disaster. Because just a few things going wrong with the film creates a giant disaster. It does. And I think that's important to keep in mind when criticizing the Angry Video Game Nerd movie, which I'll focus on that first. Like I said, it's very disconnected. I feel like James had all these different ideas, and maybe he didn't really know exactly how much money he'd have, or resources, or time he'd have to create this movie. And when you're like a writer-director, you have extra flexibility, right? And it's complicated. Like, it's frustrating to people involved with filmmaking or video making in general, because none of us are ever gonna be as loved as the Angry Video Game Nerd. We're never going to have that kind of like resources and connections, like people wanting to help us, wanting us to succeed so much. And obviously a lot of people feel like I do, right? And how I feel is like this jealous frustration, because if I had that money, I would be able to make my movie. I would probably want more, though, for my movie to truly become the vision that I want it to be, for it to be perfect as it exists in my head. I would probably need more money than that, realistically. Like, probably twice the budget of the AVGN movie to really like get every shot to be perfect. I would need that kind of money, because I'd need to pay people. I'd need to pay people to take the extra takes, to take the extra time, right? So it's tricky, right? And people should keep in mind, like, even though it's just a whole different animal, right? Like, even James making this video right here with Pat, who's probably involved in this? 4 or 5 people at the most. That's all. And it's probably like a half a day shoot, right? Like, maybe they spent the whole day together, since they're both, you know, retro gaming, the two like biggest retro gaming content creators. You know, I think they live in different areas, so it looks like James's like room, so I would assume Pat traveled, so they probably spent the day together. But realistically, the shooting probably took up like the bulk of a day, like 60% of the, you know, the waking hours or whatever, the hours that they're up. But that's like way different than spending weeks on a film where you got tons of people and tons of crap to organize. It's just a totally different animal making a film. So it's very excusable, right? Like, it's not the biggest deal. And no matter what, James still got a movie. He wanted to make a movie. He made it. He's got all these great memories, made friends. They can watch the movie together. They can talk about how they made this movie together. They can talk about what they like. They can talk about what they don't like. They can talk, like, it's a success because it got made. If it never got edited, they never finished filming, then it's truly a disaster. But it exists. It's out there, right? And I'm jealous. Now I'm going to talk about my journey with film. So I watched the movie The Last Jedi, and I liked The Force Awakens. Force Awakens was kind of cool. You know, I feel like they butchered Han Solo. Like, well, I mean, they literally butchered him, but it was... They only really dropped the ball in epic fashion, I feel like, with Han Solo. So I was excited. I wanted to see what they could really do with, like, really good CGI at their fingertips and have Luke. I'm like, there's going to be some cool stuff going on. But my God, this movie is terrible on every level. And I thought a few things. I thought, why would you destroy Luke's character? He's Luke Skywalker. You're destroying the legacy of the character and ultimately kind of the legacy of the actor. Like, you're damaging it. You're not completely destroying it, but you're harming it. To have the character do this is so dumb. So epically, insanely dumb. Like, why'd you spend like over $1 billion to get this franchise just to spit on the characters? Insane. Why would you do this? How just fire the people who even thought of doing this? Because, like, they have Luke where he was training his nephew. Like, he trained Leia. Leia has a kid with Han. Luke trains the kid, Kylo. And Kylo starts slipping to the dark side. Luke decides that he's gonna, like, needs to kill him. That's the only solution. Luke, who saw the good in Darth Vader, thinks it's a lost cause. Thinks that Kylo Ren is a lost cause, which, I mean, we know he isn't. But Luke somehow, I don't know if he's got like dementia or something. They don't really explain why Luke is just a total coward and moron and pathetic loser who's just totally given up on his literal nephew that's demented beyond belief. But it's what happened. Doesn't make any sense, but it's what happened. So I thought, and the stuff with Leia, and just everything with the movie, they spend like a third of the movie with like Finn and Rose on a casino planet just being chased. It's dumb. So many things are so fundamentally terrible about The Last Jedi that it's just shocked me to my core. I thought, there's huge money behind this. This is like a blockbuster, huge, successful, giant budget, multi-$100 million film. Like, this is... Why would it be so garbage? There's good writers out there. There's good filmmakers. There's people you could find a homeless person on the street and they'd come up with a better Star Wars movie than this. This is ridiculous. Get me, pay me, tag me in, coach, send me in. You could pay me $50,000 and it would change my life. You know, like, send me there. Fly me out, Mickey. Fly me there. And I will just tell people, no, we're not doing that. We're not having Luke be this dumb hermit. Let's spend 5 minutes and come up with a way better reason as to why he's on this planet. We could do it in 5 minutes. We technically don't even need a script. Like, my God, like, are you joking me? I'm like, you could give me a third of this film's budget and I would make a film that's 80 times better. But you could literally have me on the fly come up with a better Star Wars film than this. They're like, this is so pathetic. Like, what? Are you joking me? Like, literally, Disney cut the budget by a third. By 2/3, I mean. Have a third of the budget and pay me, like, pay me half of what you paid Rian Johnson. And I will make an infinitely better Star Wars film. You know, we can't travel back in time, but if you had done that instead of this, are you joking me? It would be like, what? I would have made one of the best Star Wars films ever made. You know, it probably wouldn't be better than The Empire Strikes Back, but my goodness, it would be the best film in that trilogy, in this freaking, you know, the latest trilogy. It'd be infinitely better than The Last Jedi, and it would be a film that people would look back on and be like, yo, that middle one was hitting. That was a good one. Like, let's maybe not rewatch The Force Awakens or the Palpatine one, whatever it's called, Rise of Skywalker. That's it. Literally, it would get millions and millions of rewatches on Disney Plus on a yearly basis. Like that's the difference it would make. And I think literally a random homeless person who doesn't care about Star Wars, who's just seen the original trilogy, a random hobo who's seen the original trilogy would come up with a better Star Wars film than The Last Jedi. We all know it. Don't deny it. And it's genuinely true. It's not even a joke. Like, I'm not joking at all, remotely. And it just disgusted me to my core, because I'm like, this is one of the biggest films, like, of that decade. And it's trash. And I could do better. And I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not experienced at that point. I've never been involved with a film at that point. But it made me think, like, what if they did? Like, they should. It would make them more money. They should. But I feel like that it really inspired me to write my own script. I'm like, I could do better. I could write a better script. I could certainly film a better film. But I could also, like, write a better... I'm like, because I thought, there's fan fiction exists. There's probably hundreds, if not thousands, of literal Star Wars film scripts that just random people and writers have already written that they could have just grabbed, they could have just bought, they could have just, like, literally, people nerd out for Star Wars so hard, and I'm not that into it at all. But there's random people who would probably literally hand Disney for free their Star Wars script that's got a million better ideas than The Last Jedi and would make a way better film. So that was one thing. Now another thing was, there's a guy in the Angry Video Game Nerd movie called the Nostalgia Critic. He remembers it, so you don't have to. Now, the Nostalgia Critic had this website, an early YouTube. He had a website, and I had encountered the Nostalgia Critic and the Nostalgia Chick. I don't even know if it was them. I think it might have been other people who were just uploading their videos onto YouTube. But there was like a banner across the bottom, like a watermark that said "That Guy with the Glasses." So I'm like, what's this "That Guy with the Glasses"? I like the Nostalgia Critic. I like the Nostalgia Chick. I'm going to check out this website, because I understood that there was like certain like copyright rules with YouTube. But I just wanted to see what the site was about. So I checked it out, and I mostly just watched Nostalgia Critic and Nostalgia Chick, like the videos, because they had videos on there that weren't on YouTube, or the YouTube version would be like edited, have stuff edited out. And on this "That Guy with the Glasses," that just didn't matter, like copyright. So they just played parts of movies, and I'm like, and then reviewed them, and I'm like, this is like a million times more entertaining. This is really good content, which you probably still can't watch on YouTube because of copyright. But eventually, there was like these drop-down menus across the top on "That Guy with the Glasses." And there was other content creators, which it took a while, but eventually I clicked on one because it was called The Distressed Watcher. And I'm like, that sounds interesting. And then it was TJ Kirk, the amazing atheist, who was playing this other character, the Distressed Watcher, and he was reviewing movies. And I'm like, all right, this is cool. Like, this is kind of good. And then eventually I watched Spoonie. And I'm like, this is crazy. I like this guy too. Like, there's some cool content creators on here. So I kind of eventually checked everyone out. There's like Linkara, Dimanda Hagen or something, Film Brain. And then eventually I clicked on one that sounded the most boring, because it was just a person's name. I'm like, why would you just have a random person's name? Is this even going to be like a content creator? And it was Brad Jones. And that's who you see on your screen from Stoned Gremlin Productions. Now, he didn't have a YouTube channel for a while. Like, he didn't go on YouTube, I don't think, until like until that guy with the glasses like was no longer a site or something, because he was just on this other site. So the he had a few different series. One was his like main series, the Cinema Snob, where he plays this like really snobby movie reviewer. I've never really been that into those videos, but I love his midnight screenings where him and his friends review old, well, not old, because it was movies as they released, but it was, they would go see them at midnight and then review them in the car afterwards.
Excellent.
And I loved it. I just fell in love as like I slowly got to know the personalities of his like friends and partners and stuff. And they would make mention to these films that they worked on. And I was like, wow, that's weird. Like, I kind of wonder about those. So then eventually he uploaded this. Now, that guy with the glass, I realized that he had a channel on Blip, and all the like that guy with the glasses creators, they put their videos on Blip, and from there, like, that guy with the glasses kind of hosted those videos. So there was this awesome like YouTube like website called Blip TV, where the just copyright just didn't matter. It was freaking awesome. I don't know if they made like ad revenue off of it. I don't think I ever saw ads on the videos that I watched. So it's just ad-free YouTube with no copyright. It was incredible. So anyway, I watched all these, and I could tell that him and his friends had like been involved with films, but it was hard to really comprehend to what extent. So eventually he puts up this video where he's working on a film called Shot on Shittio. And it's him in the park with his friends just making a film. This is his friend Jared. And I'm like, they're just in this park, just guerrilla style, shooting a film. I didn't know you were allowed to do that. I didn't know that was an option. I'm like, that's really cool. That's one of the coolest, most inspiring things I ever saw. But I didn't really, I just kind of felt like that would be awesome. I wish people were doing that where I lived. And so that led me to look into other stuff. That's Lloyd the cat, I believe. He has another cat that's like, I think it's called Chloe. But anyway, so that led me to his other videos that he's uploaded, where him and his friends are, where it's behind the scenes of other stuff that they've worked on, or just like anything where they're talking about stuff that they worked on. But yeah, and I'm like, holy, they've been making these Shot on Shittio, and that's like kind of the style of video. The more general term is like zero budget, but because you used to kind of have to, just from like access to technology, because you probably weren't going to be dealing with like actual film. The easiest way to make a film would be with this, like, to be with like a camcorder. And so you're like shooting home video and then editing it from there. Just like the cheapest, probably, different times. This would have been like early 2000s. When did that come out? Oh, guess 2016. Yeah, because they were working on it when I saw it. But I was like, so they didn't. They could have gone digital. And I think for some of the ones before that, they probably did film it digital. But the shot on Shidio is the idea of like, you've got no budget and you're just making stuff with people. Like there's no way you got money to pay anybody. But people love film. And if you can get people to just make a film, I fell in love with the idea. Brad Jones is one of my favorite content creators. So then eventually, my best friend had read some books from Lloyd Kaufman, who is, I may as well bring him up. Does Lloyd have two D's? Lloyd Kaufman. President of Trauma Entertainment. This guy's made a whole bunch of films, and he like founded a film studio that makes these like zero budget films. Poultrygeist, Night of the Chicken Dead, an absolute classic film. And like me and my best friend have always been into movies and talked about them and watched them. Oh my god, Terror Firmer. Just really cool movies. So when my buddy came to me and wanted to make a movie locally where we live, where there's no like kind of like there's not a film community, I'm like, yeah, let's do that. Because I thought it would be way harder, because I understood like Brad Jones had been doing it for a while, like over a decade, and had all these had him and his friends had been doing it for decades, and he had like was already basically like a YouTuber. And this was like years and years after this happened, after Brad Jones made Shot on Shidio. But I thought like this is totally achievable. I thought it would take a lot longer in terms of like, I thought there would be very few people who would want to be involved. But no, there was tons of people who wanted to be involved. But that's a story for a whole nother time. But yeah, like I haven't seen any of Brad Jones' films. I want to. I should. But I bet they have more of a vision than the AVGN movie. I bet they're a little bit more like cohesive, well thought out, and but that's because once you've done it a couple times, you kind of get the understanding, like, hey, of where your limitations truly are, what you can do, what's realistic. But yeah, I appreciate James for making what he wanted to make. Like I said, it's great that he has an end product that is like at least close to what he dreamed up in his head, because I can tell you, I wrote a movie. Like, Star Wars The Last Jedi inspired me to write a film script, and I want to make the movie. And every shot, every frame of the movie is in my head, right? Like, maybe not the music, like music cues and stuff. Like, that's not exactly in my head. That's just not how my brain works. But everything that's said and everything that happens, everything that would idealistically be on screen. Now, obviously, it exists in my head. The movie exists in my head, but without very much music. But like literally, it's like I could play it in my head, essentially. But once I go to make it, I'm not going to be able to get all of the exact shots that I'm imagining, because like there's going to be technical limitations. Like there's certain shots. There's like one scene where two of the main characters are like driving in a car, and I just don't even know how to like get those shots. But I know I could get something that's close to those shots, right? And I feel like James, he got he just had a ton of ideas, and he, you know, he made a mountain of ideas. He made a mountain out of a molehill, whatever a molehill is. But yeah, overall, like, great video by Folding Ideas. He talks about James' failed podcast, which I feel harsh saying that, because probably some of them probably have millions of views, which way exceed anything I've uploaded. But James just isn't made. I feel like James would make a good fourth on a podcast with guys who are great. Like, there's some people who are just made for podcasting, right? And James isn't that. But I feel like he could be the fourth on a podcast that, like, doesn't center around him or gaming, because it's just hard when somebody's so private. When somebody like James Rolfe, it's complicated because he's willing to be edgy, he's willing to swear, he's willing to, you know, talk about diarrhea and crazy obscenities, but he's not that controversial ultimately, and he's extremely private, so he's just could never exist as anything beyond like the fourth or fifth guy on a podcast, which at that point, like, the podcast would be about other people, and that just it can't, you can't force a James shaped peg into a, I don't know, Logan Paul sized hole. But yeah, check out Folding Ideas video on James Rolfe. Interesting, the relationship between that we all have, and it's all individual, right? Like, I love James Rolfe's content overall, but there's some stuff I don't like. And that's kind of true of every content creator, right? Check out him, check out James Rolfe, check out Pat the NES Punk. Don't check out The Last Jedi, it's terrible, unless you're going to get the similar inspiration, right? If you haven't seen it, probably actually I would recommend you watch it. But you need to see the original trilogy first to really understand how bad this film is, and to really get that fire underneath you of, like, if they can do this terrible of a job when it is a slam dunk like a Star Wars movie, where you have people, an entire culture of people. Like, if you've ever gone to a convention in your life, you've seen people dressed up as Star Wars characters. One of the most, like, intense, die-hard fandoms you could ever have. And for them to just put, like, no effort into this film, just no effort into the writing or directing, is insane. Like, the storytelling is just so far beyond garbage, it's incredible. Check out The Game Chasers. Now, they similarly have, like, crowdfunded a movie, and they haven't. I mentioned jealousy, like a jealous frustration for James Rolfe. Now, these guys, like, haven't gone to film school as far as I understand, but they've made a film. I haven't seen it yet, but logically, them not being film students like James Rolfe is, them not having probably the same size of budget, the same connections to, like, film-centric content creators and all the resources associated with that, like, they don't have that, right? So they're starting from a further behind point than James is, and their movie's probably certainly going to be better. That's because of having vision and, you know, hopefully an understanding of their strengths. I look forward to it, and even if it sucks, I'm still, like, I'm gonna have more, I don't know, like, leeway for them for not having gone to film school, and not, like, their videos they're not, like, in costumes, like, their content isn't, like, scripted, so they're not going in with nearly the experience that, like, James Rolfe went into his movie. So I'm gonna be more lenient, but if it stinks, I might talk about it. But I look, no matter what, even if it sucks, they still got to make it with their buddies. They're gonna rewatch it with their buddies for the rest of their life. They're gonna talk about. They're gonna, they have great stories, great experiences. So it's a win no matter what. Who cares what random people on the internet think about it, or just the general audience think about it, right? If their goal is to become some big, successful Hollywood director, then yeah, you can say they should care about those things. But like for a first movie, that should be the last thing on your mind for a first movie, is like comparing it to like Guardians of the Galaxy, right? So yeah, check out Game Chasers if you want to see people buying retro video games. Check out Brad Jones. I feel like if there was ever going to be a Cinemassacre podcast that was successful and made sense, it would be the Cinema Snob podcast. Because, like, your name's Cinemassacre. Why wasn't your podcast talking about, like, film and, like, horror films? Why was it talking about, like, your random, like, coworkers talking about what beers they drank in the last 2 weeks? Weird. But yeah, check out Brad Jones at Stone Gremlin Productions. Absolute enormous level of respect for this guy. I can't believe I'm not subscribed. It's just because I haven't really checked out his content, and I've only had this channel for like less than a year. I haven't watched him in a while, but enormous inspiration for me, because just, I mean, look at him. He's got squirrel puppets in his hand, and he's just shooting a film, right? And that's the kind of thing that people don't realize. And I feel like James kind of doesn't even realize to a large extent, is if you treat a film kind of like an extended YouTube video, more than like looking at a film as like being this high bar, putting it up on this huge pedestal, then you're just making it harder on yourself, right? Treat it like a YouTube video where you would just go and shoot it with your friends, but then just extend that. Say, hey, me and my friends are going to go shoot this YouTube video in the park, but then extend that over like 10 days, and not even necessarily all in a row, right? It could be months apart. Now, you don't want to go too far, because then you run into it being different seasons in the background and all kinds of stuff. But like, film all your outside stuff across one section of time. Maybe meet up like 3 times in a month or a couple months. Film what you need. Then film your if you can film your inside stuff pretty much whenever, because you're inside, so the seasons don't necessarily matter. And that's how you make a good film. And you can, right? Like, I'm certain whatever Brad Jones made first is probably pretty crappy, whatever his first film was. But I almost guarantee you the rest of them are going to be better than the AVGN movie for sure, because you learn things, right? Like I said, you learn your limitations, you grow, your ideas that you come up with, you're better at like manifesting them into an actual end product. So the whole process from like moment one of an idea forming, it's going to be like just a way more natural process. It's going to form better from its origin because you're experienced, because you've done it. And that's one thing that I guess also is like a little confusing about James, is that he it's like he overlooks that dude, you're gonna have to make like several of these, especially with the budget and like what you're going for, having like CGI and stuff. Like, this real complicated, man. I feel like James tried to skip several steps, and it's like, man, it's a learning experience. You gotta look at this as like one stepping stone. Probably gotta make like 2-3 more films before it's gonna be easy and really come together.